All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. My name is Lauren Gatis. I'm with Network On. We're a coalition that celebrates America's excellent internet, and we are thrilled to be here this morning with OTI and Public Knowledge for this fantastic, expert-packed event this morning. We're going to kick things off. Network On has a short video that we created about the importance of digital navigators. So we're going to start off by showing that. Thank you.
Our world is almost completely digital now. I think if you're not connected online, you're basically not an active part of our society.
It truly affects every aspect of a human being's life. That is why it is a human right. Just like, for a human to survive, they must have water.
You have your education online, jobs are not only moving online, but the job application process is moving online, and different government benefits, healthcare access is all being done virtually now as well. The fact that 20% of Americans are offline means that we need folks on the ground to reach these Americans.
In order to close that gap, it's going to take building that trust, rebuilding that trust in communities, and that can only be done within trusted community circles and training our community members to be what we call digital navigators.
Digital navigators are just trusted community members who are able to help their other community members navigate the digital landscape.
It's so important to have these trusted community members that are the ones sharing these resources like affordable connectivity program, like low and no cost internet options to community members who otherwise would not know.
We also see when signing up for these government programs, there's a lot of lack of trust. It's nice to have someone that say, hey, this program is good. I know other people have used it. Let's get you signed up for an internet plan or get you access to a device.
You'd be surprised that there's tens and thousands of adults in every city throughout the country who do not know how to power on a computer or how to use a mouse. That face-to-face interaction is very valuable and important to our community members who are new to the digital world.
We believe that everyone deserves to have technology, but we also know that you need to learn how to use this technology, right? There was this one story that very much impacted me about a college student and how she was very much struggling to get through her classes because she did not have a device or a laptop. So when she reached out to me and she sent me these long paragraphs of how much it impacted her life, her career, she was able to finish college. So that for me was very, it even gave me a teary eye, but for me it was very impactful.
This 20% that are not connected, many of them are not aware that there are resources such as ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program, to help them get connected, to be able to get low cost or even free internet.
It's so important that we have digital navigators helping our other community members, helping sit them down and walk through the application process to make sure that this is not too difficult and that you would be accessing a benefit that would be really helpful to you.
Life has changed. Our economy has changed. The world has changed. It's kind of like you got to get on the boat or you're going to miss the boat. So ensuring our community members get on that boat of life and have accessibility and digital skills, it's our duty, and that's what we're here to do.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here and give you a welcome to New America, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Lillian Corral, and I'm the head of Technology and Democracy Programs at New America and the Senior Director for the Open Technology Institute. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our on-site facility and conference center, especially on behalf of our partners, Public Knowledge and Network On. This is an important conversation, obviously, on the Affordable Connectivity Program, and an exciting way to start off a set of weeks and a week of action that everyone across DC and America can be proud of, because the Affordable Connectivity Program is really critical, obviously, to both our democracy and to closing the digital divide. First, I wanted to share a few of the reasons why we are so committed to connectivity and digital equity before I hand it over for a quick intro to New America's CEO, Anne-Marie Slaughter, who's going to introduce our special first guest. As many of you may know, New America is dedicated to renewing the promise of America by continuing to realize the nation's highest ideals, honestly confronting the challenges caused by rapid technological and societal change, and seizing the opportunities that those changes create for us. Our Technology and Democracy cluster of programs is a group of tech-centered programs that share a vision of the world in which technological innovations are tools through which people advance democracy and reduce inequality. And broadband, obviously, is a tool that can strengthen our democratic society by connecting us, by allowing us to engage in discourse, and providing us access to economic opportunity and growth for all. And this is a vital foundation for our democratic institutions. Since 2009, the Open Technology Institute has worked at the intersection of technology and policy to ensure that every community has equitable access to digital technology and its benefits. We promote universal access that are both open and secure, and we use a very multidisciplinary approach to research, to write about, and to advocate for ways that make broadband available and affordable. And this includes working in support of the creation of the Emergency Broadband Benefit during the COVID-19 pandemic, and now its successor, the Affordable Connectivity Program. It has also included support for efforts to expand broadband infrastructure, such as the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. But let us be clear that these investments only address one important side of the digital divide equation, and I'm speaking to a room that is definitely the choir, right? The other side is equitable and meaningful adoption, and that depends on people having the financial means to get and maintain internet service, which the ACP facilitates. For too many people, broadband remains too expensive. That's just the bottom line. And so today we'll hear stories of how the ACP is helping millions of households afford broadband service. The ACP is working, and with continued support, it can help even more people across the country. We have a very special set of speakers this morning, which will be followed by a panel of leaders that will share stories of successful outreach to communities and explore how we can expand effective practices. Our second panel is going to turn to the future of the ACP and how the program can continue to help bridge the digital divide. As you all know, current funding for the ACP is projected to end mid-2024, and so the time to act is now. And so with that, I'd love to turn it to Anne-Marie Slaughter, who will welcome our next guest.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Anne-Marie Slaughter, the CEO of New America. I truly wish I could be with all of you in person, but it's a pleasure to welcome you even virtually to our event on closing the digital divide, the Affordable Connectivity Program on the ground and in DC. And I welcome you on behalf of the Open Technology Institute at New America, and also our partners, Network On and Public Knowledge. OTI, the Open Technology Institute, has been working on closing the digital divide for many, many years. We've advocated for innovative policies, both to spur competition in the broadband market and also to improve adoption in underserved communities across the country. And as part of that work, we have long supported the Affordable Connectivity Program. You will hear in the remarks and panels today about the successes of that program, but also what we all need to continue to do to assure those successes going forward. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Alan Davidson. And here again, I so wish that I could be standing on stage beside him. Alan is my longtime friend and colleague as the director of OTI. And then also, after government service, he returned as an OTI fellow. Today, as all of you know, he is the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communications and Information and the NTIA Administrator. Alan's done lots of other things. Before he came to OTI, he was at Google. He started Google's public policy office in Washington and led government relations for Google in both North and South America. He came to us and then went into government in the Obama-Biden administration as the first director of digital economy in the Department of Commerce under Secretary Pritzker. He returned to us and then went to the Mozilla Foundation, where he was a senior advisor. And there, the Mozilla Foundation is a global nonprofit promoting openness, innovation, and participation on the internet. So Alan has been in the private sector, the public sector, and the nonprofit sector. He is what New America board member Todd Park calls a tri-sector athlete. He is a wonderful person to have at the head of NTIA right now, and it gives me enormous pleasure to turn over the conversation to him.
Well, that was so nice. My thanks to Anne Marie. That was lovely, and it's really lovely to be back here at NTIA. I'm sorry, not here at NTIA. Here at New America, Freudian slip. Here at home with the choir. Yes, it's nice to. It is nice to be here, and I do want to thank New America and Network On and Public Knowledge for organizing today's event, and really salute this diverse and expert group we've brought together to talk about the Affordable Connectivity Program. And it is wonderful to be back at New America and to be with so many of you who have been contributing to the success of the Internet for All program, which is my current obsession and devotion at NTIA. Today kicks off the Biden-Harris administration's Affordable Connectivity Program Week of Action. We have more than 300 organizations from across the country committed to raising awareness about the ACP. And to start, I'd just like to say a little about what's really at stake when we talk about the Affordable Connectivity Program and Internet for All. I don't have to tell you folks in this room that the internet is now the essential communications tool in our modern world. It is essential for access to work, access to education, access to healthcare, access to justice. And yet today, here in America, in 2023, millions of people across the country still lack access to an affordable high-speed internet connection or lack the means and the skills to use it. And the recent FCC map that just came out showed over 8.3 million households and offices still without basic internet service, still unserved under the map's definitions. Just one more data point in this story that we all know. So that's about to change. We've been talking about the digital divide in this country for more than 20 years. But thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, we now have the resources to do something serious and structural about it. The law provides $65 billion in new funding to invest in a simple and ambitious mission for all of us, to connect everyone across America to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet service. We are calling this initiative Internet for All, and we mean all. And the ACP is at the heart of the Biden-Harris administration's efforts to make the dream of Internet for All a reality. Today, affordability is not a luxury, it is a necessity. If we want to reach our goal of helping Americans thrive online, a connection alone is not enough. A connection to a family's home doesn't help that family if they can't afford the service. Nothing illustrates the importance of an affordable connection quite like the real-world stories that we've heard, that I've heard from people all across the country. Our team recently spoke with Robin Johnson, who's an educator on the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Reservation. And through the whole COVID-19 pandemic, Robin was struggling to balance her own workload with her children's needs for very limited bandwidth in their home. She needed a faster internet connection, but with her husband out of work, she couldn't afford one. Thanks to NTIA's Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program, a local provider was able to offer cheaper service to families like Robin's in her community. And then, thanks to the $75 subsidy provided under the ACP for tribal communities, Robin and her family can afford that service. We've written her story up on our website, but now that Robin and her children can get ahead in school, they're not falling behind, and Robin's not falling behind either. Stories like this, and we have many of them, illustrate why ACP is so essential to ensure that millions of low-income Americans can get online. In fact, more than 18 million households are already saving an estimated $600 million per month with this program. And we know that nearly half of all eligible households are still learning about the incredible benefits that they can receive. I am confident that as we better inform these households on the benefits of ACP, many more will sign up, and that's part of where you all come in. ACP is critical to connect these households, and it's also critical for the success of our broadband infrastructure programs. People need to be able to afford to get online, and providers need the certainty that they'll have customers, especially in rural and low-income communities, before they deploy their networks. NTIA's BEAD program, our state grant program, requires that participating ISPs offer a low-cost option. ACP helps ensure that providers can deliver on this requirement in all corners of the country and ultimately meet the broader goal of connecting everyone in America to affordable, reliable, high-speed internet service. And I just want to emphasize, there's a tie-in here. We care about the success of our state grant program relies on having a low-cost option to make sure that there's affordability, but our deployment also is at risk without ACP. And I'd say that our goal, our broad goal of closing the digital divide is at risk because ACP is at risk of running out of money. We cannot allow this program, which has widespread support, to fail. We see the support that's out there in so many ways. I am particularly grateful for President Biden's leadership, as well as the tireless efforts of Chairwoman Rosenworcel and the entire team at the FCC who've been building out this program. They've done an outstanding job at getting ACP to where it is today. And of course, I appreciate the support that we've seen from service providers who've embraced ACP, and many of whom stepped up last year to offer affordable plans under the program. But I have to say I'm most grateful to all of you, to the people in this room, who are getting the word out to diverse communities throughout the country, ensuring that everyone can benefit from ACP. And now there's a new task in front of all of us, ensuring that ACP is on firm footing going forward, firm financial footing going forward. To accomplish this goal, I really have two asks for all of you. First, please make your voices heard in this conversation. Let your federal lawmakers know how important this program has been to people in your community and the communities you work with. Make sure they understand the real world impact, the real life impact that an affordable high-speed internet connection can have. And remind them how difficult it will be to deliver that connection to everyone in this country without the help of a vital tool like ACP. The second big thing is really to continue to make sure Americans know about the ACP. And even as we work to put the program on firm financial footing, we need to make sure that people use it. Let households know they can check their eligibility, sign up, and find fully covered internet plans at getinternet.gov. We can't assume that people know about this program. We have to provide the information and resources that they need to sign up. And I'll just say as an aside, I have heard over and over again out from communities that Hearing about it from the government is very different than hearing about it from community leaders that they trust. They trust you in a way that is different from how they may trust all of us in government. So I'd encourage you to get out there. In closing, I'll just note this is a historic moment, and I think many of you feel it too. You know, generations before us brought electricity and water to rural America. They built the interstate highway system. They did big things. And this is our generation's big infrastructure moment. This is our opportunity to connect everyone in America to the tools that they need to thrive in the modern digital economy. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take years to do it. And we need everyone to do their part. And that's why I'm so glad to be here with you. Thank you for your partnership, and I look forward to working with all of you to make this dream of the Internet for all a reality at last. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Now, before we get started with our panel and discussion, we just wanted to share some remarks from Governor Roy Cooper from the state of North Carolina.
Hi, everybody. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper here. From telemedicine to remote work to education to connecting small businesses with global markets, the Internet is helping people live, learn, heal, and prosper. And we want all communities in our state to get connected. Even though we're making progress, we still have too many North Carolinians on the wrong side of the digital divide. But we're closing the gap, not only by laying fiber, but making sure people can afford it and know how to use it. That's why North Carolina established the nation's first Office of Digital Equity and Literacy. Part of that effort is promoting the Affordable Connectivity Program. More than 767,000 North Carolina households have enrolled in ACP, and we're working every day to increase that number. We know people depend on that $30 a month, so I hope you'll join me in pushing this funding to be extended. We're also securing additional federal funding through President Biden's BEAD program. It's amazing that the dream of connecting people to high-speed internet across our state and country is finally coming true. Let's work to make sure everybody is included. Thanks so much.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm Angela Seifer. I'm the Executive Director of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. We are a unified voice for digital equity in the United States. And we have an amazing panel today to talk to you about the Affordable Connectivity Program. I'm a little echoey. Yeah, okay. Friends in the back, I'm a little echoey. Okay, so the Affordable Connectivity Program, you've already heard, right, how important it is. We're here to give you some specific stories from the folks that are doing this work on the ground. We have two of those who are actually helping folks sign up for the Affordable Connectivity Program, and then we have two who are assuring other people can help folks sign up for the Affordable Connectivity Program. So we have a fabulously diverse panel of experiences up here. So we're going to just do a quick who's who so you can know the answers to that. Angie Cooper, Executive Vice President of Heartland Forward, where she turns research into action, creating new partnerships, leading on policy solutions, and serving as a resource for Heartland communities. Abe Kamez, down at the end there, a lifetime tribal community member and serves as a digital navigator for the Hoopa Valley Tribe, connecting residents with affordable internet access, devices, and digital skills. Natalie Bettenker is a deputy director at the Center for Digital Equity, which, can we just say we now have Center for Digital Equity? We have multiple of those across the country. It's pretty exciting. So Natalie is with Queen's University in Charlotte. In this role, she leads the planning and execution of the Community Council's co-created goals and provides oversight for the operations of the center, including the Digital Navigator service. And then we have Dr. Elisa Valentin, Senior Director of Technology and Telecommunications Policy at the National Urban League, where she advocates for inclusive policies that center and empower communities of color as consumers, workers, and entrepreneurs. So we are super lucky that all of these folks willingly joined us today. We're going to start with just a get to know you. Can you tell us a bit more about what's the value of ACP and some of what you've experienced working with the folks that you work with and what you hear back from them about Like, why even do this? Angie, you want to start?
Absolutely. Thanks, Angela. And thanks to New America for convening the event today. It's great to see some partners and friends in the room that are actively working each and every day to truly close the digital divide. As Angela mentioned, I am with an organization called Heartland Forward. We call ourselves a policy think and do tank focused on being a resource for states and communities to advance economic development in our communities in the 20 states that we call the Heartland. And we believe, and why do we work on this issue specifically and care about getting more information out about ACP, is because if we're going to be an organization focused on accelerating economic development, we believe this is the #1 economic issue of our time. And that means a #1 economic issue, just not for our states and communities, everything from education to health, telehealth to workforce, but for families. And that's really where it hits home, and the work that we're doing across the Heartland, and specifically in 5 states today: Oklahoma, Arkansas, Ohio, Tennessee, and Illinois. We've been able to work with organizations. For instance, we know that about 65% of Hispanics say that they report having internet at home. So we worked with LULAC and provided and touched over 300,000 plus households in the states that we work in to get them information. And what did that do? That changed their lives. We have moms telling us that it is one less thing now that I have to worry about when I go to the grocery store, because I know that I have help getting internet service. It is one less thing that dad has to think about when he's helping his child do his homework, because he now doesn't have to pick up his children, run the errands, go to the library. He can pick up his children, run the errands, and go home so he can help with homework before bath time. And the stories go on and on. I mean, it really is, it's advancing, yes, our communities, because we're getting better infrastructure in the ground, but through a program like ACP, we are able to see our families advance and the ease of doing it, so they can have the quality of life that everyone deserves. One other thing that I'll mention about ACP is the fact that it provides the opportunity for dollars to get a one-time device in the home, and that is huge. By the way, we all were doing this during COVID, and how do we sign people up, and how do we get people devices? But this was something that was needed well before COVID, and as was said earlier, having internet and having a laptop in your home, where if you're like me, it sits next to me when I'm on the couch, it sits next to me while I'm in bed, but the ease of just opening your laptop is like the ease of being able to flip on the lights. And if we all take a moment to think about that, that is an ease for probably most of us in this room, but it is not the ease for most people in the Heartland. And again, this isn't a rural issue. This is a country issue that we're facing. So I just want to applaud the work that has been done by community leaders to provide also that one-time device. We are proud at Heartland Forward to be working and ensuring that people not only know how to sign up for ACP, but also get that device and get it in their hands and get it working right away. And I look forward to the continued discussions about some toolkits and really the work. My friends in the room always say, like, this is not work that can be done in Washington. We must remember we have to simplify things. It has to be nonpartisan. It was a nonpartisan bill that passed. That has to continue as it trickles down to the state and local level. And we have to make it simple for people.
Thank you, Angie. Elisa?
Yes, so +1 to everything that you said. But my name is Lisa Valentine, Senior Director of Tech and Telecom Policy. By way of context, the National Urban League has 92 affiliates across 36 states in DC, and we focus on the economic empowerment of Black communities and other underserved communities in urban areas, but we do care about rural communities as well. But what we know from our affiliates is that affordability remains a major barrier barrier to adoption in urban communities specifically. And this relates to people who both qualify for ACP, but also for folks who are kind of outside of that threshold who struggle to pay for broadband as well. One of the first meetings that I had when I joined the National Urban League is with our Chicago Urban League affiliate, who told me, like, yes, ACP is great. We need this program, but we also need to focus on the fact that there are other folks who cannot afford broadband, which is what I'm glad the BEAD program has, that affordable option that the folks are going to have to build out in communities. So we know that also access to devices, that is a major issue. Updated devices as well, because a lot of times we have these conversations about, like, refurbished devices, very necessary, very important. But what happens when that computer breaks down in 3 months or in 6 months? We've all had those moments, right, where our laptops, after like 2 years, they're no longer functioning. Our phones are not functioning after 2 years. And so that kind of like that one-time sort of like device voucher, very important. But the device issue is something that is under discussed. We need to make sure that people are connected to both broadband and those devices. But when we're talking about the Affordable Connectivity Program and so many other programs and initiatives that started up during the COVID-19 pandemic, what it really did was, give people the opportunity to get a major burden off of their shoulders. Listen, you're not going to budget your way out of poverty, right? When we're talking about, conversations like, cost of transportation, the cost of housing, the cost of healthcare, the cost of childcare, once you pay all of those bills, it's really difficult to afford your broadband bill every single month. So this program is helping the folks that our Urban League affiliates serve to meet their connectivity needs, whether it be, applying for a job, enrolling in our various workforce development opportunities, getting access to education, getting access to healthcare, but it's used for everything, and we know that, right? And the fact of the matter is, Congress knows that too. No one is confused here about the need to have broadband. The issue that we face is that we operate in this kind of scarcity sort of mindset, that there's not enough to go around, right? But the fact of the matter is, we're living in a country of abundance, right? And if we continuously fail to ensure that all households are meeting that basic need of connectivity, we can't be surprised when test scores are low, or when civic engagement is low, or when jobs can't be filled. So this is why, I say to that small fraction, because I think it's a small fraction of folks who might be on the fence about ACP or opposed to ACP, unless you have a plan to eradicate poverty by Q2 of 2024, you need to support the Affordable Connectivity Program. Thank you.
And that's why we invited Elisa to. Okay, Natalie, you're next.
All right. Completely agree with that. And just the Center for Digital Equity is really a backbone organization. And the intent for us is really to create more of a sustainable framework. We understand that the device issue is a continuous issue. Technology changes over time. And that is why we need to create local frameworks that are sustainable. So the Center for Digital Equity, we co-create solutions. We bring together the public sector, private sector partners, residents, and nonprofits that actually do the work to really sit down and identify the needs within our own communities, and then come up with co-created solutions like on-demand devices. We are now working towards that in the next year for our community. So with that, I'm going to just share a quick story here around the importance of this. We were at a corporate partner trying to get some volunteers for some of our local events and trying to get people engaged and raise awareness. And one of the things I like to say or often reference, like they did in the video, is, think back to your college days and the fact that, you maybe forgot you had a research paper that was due, and it's now 10 o'clock at night, and you don't have a device, and you don't have internet, and what are you going to do? And everybody in the room kind of said, oh. And so then we continue the conversation, and I said, that's reality right here, right? Could be a neighbor. And all of a sudden, towards the end of that conversation, a young man raised his hand, and he worked at this corporate entry level. And he said, I'm so glad you shared that. That was me. Like that was me. And actually, not too long ago, that was me trying to get my job done. And I had to ask a friend, and I had to contact somebody to help me get it done. And so this is the real impact. This is reality for many Americans and many people within our own community, which is why it's so important for us to be able to create this sustainable approach, right? If they can't afford it, if they don't have access to the device, but also a holistic approach. We need not only access to the device and access to the internet, but people need to learn how to utilize it, how to leverage it, how to use it in the workforce. You know, new technology changes all the time. How are we going to AI? How are we going to be able to provide these types of literacy and these types of skilling for our workforce at all levels, especially those that are underserved in our communities. You talked about the Latino community, and I'm an immigrant myself. And so many of the people that I know are still not using online banking. I mean, how many of you, it's like you pick up your phone and you can just do an easy transfer or pay a bill. Many Latinos in our community are not utilizing that. They don't trust it. They don't have the ability to get on the internet at home. They don't have the ability to leverage those skills. So that is our approach. Through our Digital Navigator program, we actually bring a more holistic approach to make sure that we're able to do all of it, right? We're able to support someone and guide someone through that.
Fabulous. Thank you, Natalie. Abe?
Good morning. Abraham Kamez, Digital Navigator for the Hoopa Valley Public Utilities District. I just recently started. October 31st was my first day. And I kind of want to give you a little background of where I'm coming from. So when we talk about rural community, the Hoopa Valley Indian Reservation is located in Northern California in Humboldt County. And like I said, it's a federally recognized tribe. And most of the people, most of the households in our area, again, the Hoopa Valley Indian Reservation, they're on either a fixed or limited income. And it's all correlates to ACPs. So most of the households within the Hoopa Valley Indian Reservation participate and or rely on state or county general assistance programs. So having that money earmarked for affordable broadband internet is really a big barrier in tribal communities, and that's where the Affordable Connectivity Program comes in. So access to reliable affordable internet is, really, a big step that once we're able to get them going with ACP. So upon enrolling a subscriber into the Affordable Connectivity Program, the instant relief that I see with the community, with the clients that I work with, because the guidelines with the Affordable Connectivity Program is that if you live on qualifying tribal land, your ACP credit is not $30, it's actually $75 that household gets, and they also get access to the device. $75 is a lot of money for a household. And these are multi-generational households we're talking about. It's just not mom and dad and one or two kids. This is mom, dad, grandma, kids and grandkids, and sometimes great grandkids. So the $75 credit that they receive through Affordable Connectivity Program is, they're looking at, what am I going to be able to use that for? And in most cases, that money that's freed up for them to be able to have that access to the internet will go to groceries or something more important. Well, it's more important than groceries, but they're able to utilize those monies that the Affordable Connectivity Program frees up for them and put it towards other necessities in the household. So with the Affordable Connectivity Program, it's really important in especially in Indian community, Native American community. And, we really would like to see that, that funding keep coming. So that's just kind of my, as boots on the ground, my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Abe. So the Digital Navigator model, we really got started kind of right before the pandemic and then really took off during those lockdown days. And it's the idea that there's a single point of contact who understands all the barriers. So we're talking today about the Affordable Connectivity Program, but the other barriers that almost everybody has mentioned, the digital skills, the devices, the tech support, these things don't end. And as Lisa noted, unless we're going to solve poverty, those things continue. The other constant is technology keeps changing. Does anybody think technology is really going to stay where it is, right? So we are never done with any of us with learning digital skills. So we have to constantly be figuring that out for those who don't have a support system already around them. So now we're going to talk a little bit, we're going to go back to Natalie and Abe on the day of a life of a digital navigator, because it does involve all those things, and right now is centering around this amazing subsidy. So Natalie, would you start us off there?
Sure. So I'm going to do a couple perspectives. The very first one is in person. We partner with a lot of local trusted partners like the school district and housing authorities and things of that sort to really do in person. And one of the reasons why we do a lot of in person is because there's that one-on-one kind of familiarity, like you see the faces, but also you're both looking at what's happening. And we've seen this be very successful with the Affordable Connectivity Program. And so I'll do a little story. We were at an event 2 weeks ago with a local housing authority. And so I got to sit down. It was one of their senior community centers. And so I got to sit down with the senior to walk her through the Affordable Connectivity Program. And what we usually do is we have iPads and we have materials that have maybe sometimes QR codes or just general information about your eligibility. And so we had the iPad in front of her, and I was like, all right, let's get started. We can't enter the information for you, but I'll just guide you through it. And she sat there for a minute. She looked at the iPad and she looked back at me and she looked at the iPad, and I was like, well, okay, so the first thing you do, and I tried to start, you put your name in here. She was like, I don't know how to work this. So just to give you an idea, so that's where we begin, right? As a digital navigator, then we start, okay, so this is where the letters are, this is where you place your name, let's walk you through that step by step. And so we continued step by step, and then we got to the point where it asked for her email. She said, email? I don't have an email. So I was like, okay, we can do that as well. So then the next step for me as a digital navigator in that point was, let's create you an email. And at that point, it's explaining to her what her options are and walking her through the fact that there's free options, and here's what your email will do, and here's how you access it. So we walked through that component as well. And then we got through the entire portion of the application after a while and explaining to her. And then I said, okay, now you take this ID and you call your internet service provider. Do you have internet? No. Okay, so is there a preference? Who would you like? And she wasn't sure. And so then the next step in my process was to tell her, what would you like to use your internet for? It's really about asking questions. I'm trying to figure out, what is she going to use the internet for? What would be the best speed for her? Who would be the best internet service provider for her to contact? And then at some point I give her the information. So towards the end of that interaction, I would say, here's your internet service options. When you call them, these are the plans that you're going to tell them that you would like. And so by the end of that, she was pretty comfortable. And what we do after that is within a few days, we will call her again and say, hey, did you have a chance to talk to that internet service provider? And at that point, it's a possibility that she says, I got too overwhelmed, I couldn't do it. Or I'm sorry, no, I haven't gotten a chance to. And at that point, as a digital navigator, I get to say, well, why don't we call them together? Let's help you through that. Or what else can we do to make sure we get there? And then after a while, we then follow up and make sure that she's connected. And if there's anything else that she needs. So at that point, we could say, hey, do you want to learn more about those tablets? Let's get you to a class. And then we would go from there. So that's kind of one perspective. There's also the over the phone, but I'm going to let Abe here give us his perspective, and then we can always go back.
Well, she brings up a great point. I mean, it's everything that she's doing, we're doing too. But, you know, for me, you know, one of my main goals as a digital navigator is I work with people to find them the affordable, reliable internet. Now, I'm fortunate, and I'm kind of in a unique situation where I work for our local ISP. And when I'm doing my outreach at community events or through Facebook or whatnot, and I get an appointment and I have a client come in and I'm trying to sign them up, verify them, qualify them for ACP, I'm going to try to sign them up for our local ISP first. Now, our local ISP is a WISP. It's a wireless internet service provider, and because of the topographical issues in our area and where they live, if the signal strength and quality is not within, the certain parameters that the broadband techs have set up, they're not going to be able to get internet through us. So I will work with that person to find alternative internet, whether it be with one of the other bigger internet service providers in our area. So working with them, if it's not with us, I'm going to find somebody else for you, and it might, take several appointments to find what's going to work for them that's going to fit within their budget, because whereas we would give them the $75 credit if we enroll them through our internet service provider, the other internet service providers have yet to honor the full $75 credit. They're only honoring a $30. So it's kind of a, you got to weigh the good with the bad on that. But I have an example of with one of the clients that I work with. We couldn't provide our internet to her, so I worked with her on the different options. Well, she ended up pulling the trigger early and bought a mobile hotspot through one of the other internet service providers. One day she walked into my office, just really distraught. She handed me a $600 bill. Unbeknownst to her, when she signed up for the mobile hotspot, she didn't realize that she, for one, had a data allowance, a data cap, and two, the internet service provider had it set up that the alerts were going to the hotspot, letting her know that she had exceeded her data allowance. It wasn't going to her cell phone, so she wasn't getting any alerts letting her know that she had gone over. And what I was able to do was sit down with her. We called that internet service provider, and it took a couple hours, but over the course of that couple hours, I was able to negotiate with that internet service provider, explain the situation, and we had got those overages all waived for her. So that just kind of come along on the lines where we're talking about the education aspect of that, the digital literacy skills that digital navigators that we want to be able to have that there and teach the people in our community that, so situations like this don't come up because she didn't know. So in addition to signing people up, educating for them about ACP, I also one of my roles is to advocate for them.
I think that's an excellent point too. Why it's so critical to have these embedded digital navigator services, right? Because you could have these great benefits, and it's not only the awareness of it, but I think it's the guidance of, we assume that everyone can just pick up an application, an online application, and do it. We assume that anyone can consume this information and walk through the process, and that may not always be the case. We also do over the phone. We have a partnership with our local city 311, kind of like when you call to get your trash and things like that. They can call and ask to speak to a digital navigator, which connects them to us, and we would follow the same process just over the phone. Our focus is to make Mecklenburg County the most digitally equitable community in America, and which is why we leverage all these partnerships, including we did a campaign with the school district, and with that, that's exactly, we leveraged all these mechanisms where we actually had connected messages sent out to the whole school district saying these are the ways that you're eligible, and oh, by the way, reach out to 311 or go to these events to get support. And we were actually able to increase our adoption rate from 40% to 48% from October to April. So
Perfect, thank you. So I think what you just heard was the human side of all this. Like, yes, that technical piece is what we're all reaching towards, so folks have access to that technology, but the way they're gonna get that access is not through the technology. Like, if anyone tells you they're gonna build an app to solve the digital divide, you dismiss them. very politely, of course, but it really is about the humans, and you're hearing from the humans today. So again, very grateful for these folks to join us. So let's turn to Angie and Elisa to talk about the outreach of ACP. The FCC recently awarded grants. They have more coming to help with this outreach. Thank goodness, this is something all of us advocated for, and they heard us. What's the value of that? Why do the outreach? And what are some of your strategies around that outreach? Angie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I can't agree more. That is my biggest, if I rewind for a few seconds, as we were rolling out the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program, everyone was very excited, and it's like, how are you rolling out? And it was online. I said, oh no, that is not going to work. We immediately at Heartland Forward, I go back to also keeping it very simple. During that process, and now with ACP, we put up billboards. We did mailers. We did door-to-door. It is that human touch. But why is it still important for us to talk about this program that exists and talk about why it needs to continue to exist is because just in the 5 states that we're working in, specifically around broadband, Arkansas and Illinois, about mid 20% households are signed up. In Oklahoma, it's 39%, Tennessee, 30%, and Ohio, 46%. So there's still such a huge gap of people that still qualify that have not signed up. And shout out to my friends that are in the room from Ohio that have done that work on the ground to get people signed up. But what do we hear on the ground of why, the radio ads, the billboards, the face-to-face still isn't working? And there's kind of 3 reasons as a human being, a friend that sits next to us at church, or a friend that sits next to our children at school, why they're not signing up. And it's 3 things. It's trust. They don't trust it. Free money. I've been overpromised and under-delivered on a lot of government programs before. Why is this different? The person that's sending me the messages, I don't even know who they are. So how do you solve for that? Again, boots on the ground, make sure that they're getting the information through a trusted source. That is huge. That seems very basic, but we're getting it wrong time and time again. So make sure that you're coordinating in a trusted way, and people also don't feel like they're gonna get it. It's gonna save, on a lot of things that they're spending in their budget, and it's going to solve for things, but then it's going to immediately go away. So how do we communicate that in a smart way? Another reason why people are not signing up for ACP is they say it's too complicated. And I think I mentioned earlier also, this is a nonpartisan issue, and while it passed at the federal level, and at the federal level, we are asking states and communities to come together to build out their plans around infrastructure, around affordability, and around digital skills. We've got to do a better job from the top down as well to build those plans together. An infrastructure plan shouldn't be separate from a digital skills plan and an affordability plan. We got to build it together, and then we got to simplify. I talk about ACP all day long, and I probably would ask my friends on the panel, if you're eligible for other things, what's that list again? And I can't remember. And so if I'm a person that is sitting next to someone that I trust, and they've, gotten this information in front of me, and you say, well, if you're eligible for these resources, you could get this, and I'm sitting there going, am I eligible? Do I have it? It's just, it's complicated for people. So I ask and encourage the federal government and the states to come together. If it's a state, opportunity that they're running, shouldn't it be an easy click? Yes, I'm eligible, and yes, okay, solved. You get this too, let's simplify this a bit. And then the third reason I think why people, if we get to that step, they're like, I just don't have time. And it's because we've complicated, it's because I don't know who my provider is. I'm in an urban area, and I unfortunately have had to move a number of times, or I'm in a rural area and I don't even know if there's a provider. So those are just 3 things I think to think about, especially for those of us that sit in Washington to say, okay, how can we streamline this process to make it easier? And then if you're on the ground, knowing what those insecurities are, being able to provide a trusted voice and make it as simple as possible. Because if you have to start a process and then wait 3 days, to your point, it's like I've already moved on. Like a zillion other things have happened in my life to go back to that, oh yeah, this is the provider and now I'm signed up. So
Super, thank you. Elisa.
Yeah, so in March, the National Urban League was really thrilled to hear that we would be receiving $740,000 from the FCC to do outreach for the Affordable Connectivity Program. And we think it's really important because we know our communities, we know what messaging really resonates, we're authentic with our messaging, we know what worries people, we know how to make sure that our messaging is clear, we know what will make people scan the QR code and visit the website because we're already in all of these communities. Like I said earlier, we have 92 affiliates across 36 states and DC. And our communities, and you heard Assistant Secretary Davidson mention this earlier, don't always trust the government, right? And rightfully so. They don't always trust industry either. And I think that, we've done such a good job of, showing people like, hey, this might be a scam if you get this random text or if you get this random phone call and all of that. And like people are on high alert about these sorts of things. So when you hear free internet, you're going to be a little concerned, right? But if you hear that from one of our Urban League affiliates who's already helped you with workforce development, or your kids are already enrolled in one of the programs that we have, you trust that messaging coming from those folks. And I think also what you're getting at here is that there's the politics issue, there's the policy issue, and then you have folks working on implementation, but then we have to focus on the delivery of ACP, and that's like where digital navigators come into play, and that's what you just heard from my colleagues up here today.
Can I add one thing too? The amazing money that is coming from the FCC on these outreach programs, and I will great credit because they did listen. They said, we learned that dollars needed to go out for this outreach. I would encourage you, though, Heartland Forward, we're working in the state of Arkansas. We're one of the recipients of those grants, but there's 5 other organizations. So we've got to, again, we still need that toolkit, right? Because if I go do my thing across Arkansas to get more people signed up, and I don't coordinate with those 4 other organizations, then we're in the same boat. So I'm all about let's not recreate the wheel, let's work together. So if you're working in communities, if you're a state broadband office, really focus on bringing all those folks together so you're hitting the right populations and hitting the right regions across your state.
And if you're not sure how to find those folks, we have at NTIA, we have over 1,300 affiliates, which are organizations working on digital inclusion issues in their communities. You can find some of them. It's not a complete list of everybody that's out doing the work, but it may get you started, and definitely build those coalitions and build those collaborations. And there is a guidebook on building coalitions. NTIA has lots of guidebooks. Speaking of resources, let's ask quickly different resources that you utilize, external resources for the Affordable Connectivity Program and digital navigators in general, or digital equity in general, that you utilize that you would recommend to others. Who would like to start us on that one?
I just want to say that you all, if you haven't already, should look at our Lewis Latimer plan for digital equity and inclusion. It came out in 2021, but we talk about the 3 A's, issues related to, access, issues related to affordability, and also access to economic opportunities. But we have a lot of great information in there. I can't take credit for doing any of the writing because I was not working at Urban League at that time, but it's a really, really great resource, and we've received amazing feedback on that. So I invite you all to check that out.
Perfect. Thank you, Elisa.
We've partnered with Education Superhighway, and they've been incredible to work with, and some of the resources that we've seen work really well. We have door hangers that we've done separately, but also we have postcards that actually show, and it was a combination. They helped us, they supported us creating this, but it actually shows what kind of speeds you need for what type of thing you're trying to get done at home, and then in the back it has the actual plans locally. And so we've seen that really work, especially for the education component. So they're a great partner, and they really do help you not only with project management, but also a lot of the outreach components and materials.
I'm hoping to be able to, as far as one of the roles as a digital navigator, is the digital literacy skills training, to be able to utilize the North Star training for the folks that I'm going to be helping those trainings with. And then a lot of the resources that I've had at hand as we built up our program basically came directly through from NTIA and the folks that I work with them.
Sorry, and the only other thing I will add is I spoke earlier about our campaign with the school district, and so when I talked about connected, it's like the phone messages and text messages that they send directly. We saw that really work. That actually created a spike in our ticketing system, which is our digital navigator ticketing pipeline. So that worked really well as flyers that went home with the kids.
And I would just add, on our website, connectingtheheartland.com, we have video information that you could use for outreach materials. We have flyers and kind of a toolkit that has information if you're out in your community. I would also, we have created great partnerships, and I know others on the panel and probably in the room have worked really closely with our libraries. They are fantastic. More to come on this, but we're working on building some digital skills training with libraries that the information will go out, and we'll be hosting some local events in libraries for everything around digital skills around telehealth and workforce and some other issues. Pew Charitable Trust, who you'll hear from in here in a bit, they also have great resources and tools and are talking to states each and every day. And so I would just encourage you, and NTIA, of course, has great tools. You can get bogged down. So, you know, find your source and stick with it, because I think whoever your source is can actually help you get other information, so you're not caught in this trap of, I cannot read anymore to get to the actual, and I'm a big fan of just picking up the phone and calling all those people I just said, because they will answer and they will help you.
Yes. So NTIA's website is digitalinclusion.org, and we very much encourage that, like, find a buddy kind of system, so that you're not wading through everything by yourselves. And NTIA has a variety of cohorts where folks can talk to each other, including an ACP cohort and a digital navigator cohort, so you can narrow in on what it is you'd like to talk about. So we're going to take some questions from the audience and questions online. So if you're online, you can look, this is how fancy our friends are at New America. If you put your question online, it's going to show up right here on this iPad. It's very exciting. I haven't used this before. So any other questions? We have questions here in person. Anita, do we getting a mic to Anita?
Thank you so much. I'll be really quick. Angie, wanted to ask you, what was your third reason why folks are not signing on to ACP? And really quickly, you had mentioned that Illinois has a really small percentage rate of folks signing on. Could you share a little bit more about that? And I want to connect with you offline. I'm putting together an FCC listening session in Chicago next month. So I'd love to make sure I'm including some of those trusted partners so that we get those right folks at the table.
Yeah, absolutely. So the three would include trust. It's complicated, and I don't have enough time. And I think the numbers I gave in Illinois specifically aren't different to many places across the heartland of the country. It's just, how do you get the information out there fast enough through the right sources of people on the ground? So I think that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Specifically, would love to talk offline. You know, Chicago, the city, is doing some really amazing work. And how do you replicate that across the state, but also know how you're talking about ACP in urban areas is going to be very different than rural areas, and we can all say defining rural is very different, but like think about how I'm going to describe it in a community of about 80,000 people that maybe their elected officials might not think it's a problem, but it really is. So I think also the libraries I mentioned earlier are key. Your education, your superintendents, your schools, they usually know what's going on with their kiddos, and then when those kiddos go home, so those are also really good partners to reach out to immediately to figure out where those gaps are and how you help solve for them.
Super, thank you, Angie. Did anyone want to add to any of that? Okay. Other questions from the audience? Really? Thank you. Love that. Just a second, we're bringing you the mic. Thanks.
Hi, thanks. I'm John Heitman. I'm an attorney who works for the National Lifeline Association. And I'm wondering if you're seeing in the field, when you're helping these consumers, a difference between when they can be their eligibility can be electronically verified versus when they have to produce some sort of documentation to verify their identity, their address, or their eligibility. And I'm wondering what your experience is with regard to that, and if you see a difference in states that have access to the SNAP database or not. More states than don't have access to the state database with National Verifier for SNAP. But if you can comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, who wants to take that one?
Yeah, for me, there's actually there's two ways that I qualify somebody with ACP now. I can work with a client and they can access through the client dashboard, where at that point they're having to, and it really depends on what they're using as their qualifier, whether it be the state benefits, SSI, SSD, if they've got a kid in a free reduced school lunch program. If they're accessing like through the consumer portal, a lot of times, I'd say 60-75% of the time, they're having to upload documents, scan and upload documents to prove their verification. Now, usually the turnaround time is fairly quick on the ACP side. Once the documents are uploaded, they'll get an email within a day, and then they get their application ID number if they qualify, or they're told that they may need to upload more supporting documents. But on the ISP side, I've gone through the qualification as a verifier, so it's a lot quicker for me to sign folks up and qualify them for ACP as an ISP, because I have the access through USAC. When I sign in the national verifier, then I sign them up as an ISP and hit verify, and most of the time I'm not having to upload any supporting documents, and I get them qualified fairly quick.
I think the other important factor is that some states have the data sharing agreement with USAC and some don't on various programs. Does anyone want to address that?
I will just add to that, one of the patterns that I've seen, and just because I help a lot of the Latino community, and so anytime that somebody is not using the last four of their social to go through the process, generally speaking, that process will be elongated, and it'll be time after time, you need this document, you need to upload it again, you need to provide it again. And so it's a continuous, and it's because a lot of times they're using a foreign passport as their ID type. And so that's really one of the biggest hurdles we've seen, especially in the Latino community, because it's hard to get their trust. And once you do get their trust and tell them that there isn't going to be sort of that cross path, so to speak, with anything else that they've got going on in their life, getting that to get through those barriers is difficult. So
I'll add too, if you're doing local events and as digital navigators, I mean, you hit on it, having the provider host the event, help with the event to streamline that process is key. I know in some of our states, Cox Communications has been a really great partner, and they're running ads right now across their markets of how do you sign up and get that information, because it can streamline the process a little bit.
And I would just quickly add that, yeah, I do think that with a lot of programs, there are broader issues of like interagency coordination and coordination between federal government, state government, local government. But when you all, are seeing a problem, right? Flag those sorts of things for the FCC. I think it's really important that even, digital navigators come in and speak with the commissioners and speak with the staff and all of that, so you can flag those sorts of things. Because again, you're talking about the politics issue, you're talking about policy, implementation, and then delivery. So we need to make sure that like all of us are on kind of one accord. And I think that, digital navigators can help with that sort of work.
Super, thank you to all of you. So we're being asked about funding, and one of the questions here, and I think that's something that always comes up, the work of doing, running a digital inclusion program across the United States, there hasn't been money for this before. And now it's kind of scattered until we wait for the actual Digital Equity Act money to hit communities. So the big question being asked then is is your work around this issue funded? Does anyone feel comfortable sharing the answer to that question?
I'm happy to share.
Natalie has an amazing answer. Y'all are going to want to move to Charlotte, actually.
So we do have different funding sources, obviously, and it's a pretty complex strategy, but we have something called the Mayor's Racial Equity Initiative. And so our mayor in Charlotte started this initiative that basically has 4 pillars. One's around workforce development, and digital equity is one of those pillars. And we were provided the leading agency for that pillar. And so what they did is they basically raised funding, and they said, okay, public sector is going to provide this amount of funding, and they pledged that amount of funding, and then private sector, we're going to raise this amount of funding. So there's a majority of what we're currently doing as far as expanding our digital navigator program and adding on program directors that are helping us kind of manage the different initiatives is actually through the Mayor's Racial Equity Initiative. We also started out the Center for Digital Equity through an endowment that came through the Knight School of Communication at Queen's University. And so that kind of got the project started, or the initiative started, and created the Center for Digital Equity, then augmented by the Mayor's Racial Equity Initiative. And then ultimately, we do a variety of different grants and services and things of that sort, with the latest one being Your Home, Your Internet grant that we were actually collaborating with the local housing authority. So that's kind of at a high level where our funding comes from.
Perfect. Thank you, Natalie.
I'm here today because of NTIA. That's where our funding comes from.
Go NTIA.
and that money came from Google.org to set up a National Digital Navigator Corps. The 18 grants are already out, so we'd have to raise some more money to do this again. But it is covering 18 different sites and digital navigators in rural and tribal communities.
I would just, it depends on the affiliate, right? Again, we have 92 affiliates, but we do have a lot of kind of public-private, partnerships, and, folks are focused on, workforce development, education programs for the young people, for our seniors, urban tech jobs, things of that sort. So it kind of depends on our affiliate. But yeah, public-private partnerships are definitely key. And ISPs benefit from this, so yeah.
I actually had this conversation recently where I realized, oh my gosh, we've been saying for years, we are marketing for you. Y'all should be paying us. And now they have more grants available. It's like all of a sudden they realize that this is in fact true. Yeah. Angie?
Same thing, public-private partnership. 2 quick examples. In Arkansas specifically, we created what we call the Arkansas Connectivity Coalition. It is not an official task force appointed by the governor. It is a group of about 15 members, business industry, philanthropic, academia, that said we care about this issue. We work weekly, daily, minute by minute with the broadband office as they're thinking through dollars that are coming in to them for digital equity and skills and some affordability stuff. So we really have built and are working in other states too to build this strategy of how do the private dollars come in and work fast, accelerate, build the program, so when the federal dollars do come, they can be sustainable. So that's really the way we think about it. We also work with an organization called Benton Institute, where we have partnered with our state broadband offices, and we train up communities to build their plans. So again, if we get this right, Ohio has been a great partner. We're about to launch in Oklahoma, and work with some of the tribal communities there. Of you're building your plan, your infrastructure plan, your digital skills plan, and your affordability plan all together. And if we get it right and we work with the broadband office when we know the federal dollars are coming, we'll have trained communities so they don't get the dollars and then say, oh, what do we do with them? But so that's really how we've been able to accelerate and push things versus, it's going to take years and years before all these federal dollars do hit the ground in communities.
And years for us to make the progress where we're going to have huge numbers to be able to talk about. Okay, we only have 2 minutes left. Last questions from our in-person audience? Okay, can I ask my panelists things you wanted to make sure to share that you didn't get a chance to say?
I would just say that you all know who influences, various members of Congress, right? Like, I think especially like people, when you're talking about in local communities, people know like, okay, this person went to college with this person, and that person's married to this person, and this person cares about this industry and that sort of a thing. Use those various connections so that we can make sure that we have sustainable funding for the Affordable Connectivity Program.
I think that, and I was just going to say that in combination, like NTIA is a great resource, and something they do really well is kind of be that convener, and that's something we do locally as Center for Digital Equity, and I think it's so important to align efforts. We have a 5-year strategic plan that actually brings together what the library's doing, what the city's doing, what the county's doing, all in one document, so that you can pick that up, anybody in the community can pick that up and understand what digital equity ecosystem is around. And so I think that's important too, to kind of some of our points that were made earlier around making sure that there is strategy that's worked together. It's a collaborative.
And for me, just the two things that come to mind real quick is, we've talked about trust earlier, and that's a big thing, especially in Indian country, and sustainable funding. So they go hand in hand. All this work that we've been doing on the ground with the folks in our community, we need to keep these programs going, because then they're just going to, if it does come to an end, they're going to see, I told you, type thing. So, sustainable funding to keep that trust.
And I would say if you're someone that works at the federal level on public policy issues, remember to make it easy for people and to get on the ground and see what's really happening. And it's okay to change some of the rules. Let's do it, let's change it, let's make it easy, and let's keep getting the money to where it needs to be.
Big thank you to our panelists today.
Of the Affordable Connectivity Program. As the first panel really talked about the local efforts, we want to talk more high level about how this program came about, why it's important, why we need to save it, and how we as advocates can be engaged in the effort. I'm Anita Banerjee. I'm the Senior Program Director for the Media and Tech team at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. We are a 70-plus-year-old organization that has more than 230 member organizations. We're very much a coalition and consensus-building organization with 11 task forces. The task force that I work most closely with is the Media and Telecom Task Force. And the broadband issue is very much a priority for the task force. So I'm delighted to be here today with these subject matter experts who are our panelists for this second panel. I'd like for them to go around and introduce themselves, to share a little bit about their organizations and why the ACP program is important to your organization. So Catherine, go ahead and start.
Thank you. Hi, folks. Thanks to everybody for joining us today, and also for sticking around. So hopefully everybody got a little dose of caffeine and shook it out a bit, so we're ready for another discussion here. I'm the project director for the Broadband Access Initiative at the Pew Charitable Trust. For those who may not be familiar, Pew is a nonprofit, nonpartisan research institution. So what does that actually mean in practice? That means that Me and my colleagues, we work on a range of complex issues that domestic and international policymakers are trying to wade through themselves. We used to joke that went from penguins to pensions, but we don't do penguins anymore. So we do a lot on conservation, but also issues in the domestic space like broadband. The ACP itself is important for many reasons, but the primary reason is that we can't get to universal, affordable broadband access without it. So I'm excited to talk to you all a little bit about what we're hearing from all of the states that we work with, as well as just what's happening in the field and why we need to keep ACP going.
Thank you, Catherine. Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh Steger. I am the Policy Director at Free Press. We are a nonprofit organization based here in DC and in Massachusetts. We are coming up on our 20-year anniversary, and throughout the past 2 decades, we have been talking about closing the digital divide. It's been very persistent. The millions of households that remain disconnected, it was true in 2003 and it's still true today. Through our work, we've done a lot of advocacy and research, and we've reached an inescapable conclusion that the high cost of broadband service is one of the leading causes of this persistent digital divide. So we advocate for policies to lower the cost of this service across the board for everyone, but particularly for low-income households who feel this barrier most acutely. We were early and strong supporters of the emergency broadband benefit when it was created in 2020, when it was launched in 2021, and when it transitioned to the ACP last year. We believe it's helped a lot of people, and we would love to see it continue. So happy to be here and talk more about the future of this program.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Cannon. I'm here with the R Street Institute as one of their policy councils on the tech and innovation team. My focus is almost exclusively on broadband and telecom issues. We're a free market organization, free market stripes run, at our core. And, we really see the ACP as a free market solution to a real problem. I mean, the digital divide does persist, and there's been a massive once-in-a-generation investment in broadband infrastructure with the BEAD program, but we're just building paths to nowhere if there aren't people on the other side to adopt and connect to that massive investment. And ACP is exactly what people on the right have been asking for as far as an affordability program for a long time. It's a tech-neutral voucher. It flows through to the customer. It gives the customer the choice of the type of plan that they have, getting them access, getting them connected to services that suits their needs. It's not being prescribed to them. They have that flexibility, and I think that's why it's such a strong program that really goes beyond what we've had and seen in the past.
I'm Kim Keenan. I'm the Chief Policy Officer for the Digital Progress Institute, and I'm here to talk about our organization. We are bipartisan, so we're not only just a nonprofit, but we actually, I know, we do something that's so rare in Washington. We are bipartisan, and if there is a, big picture of being bipartisan, this issue is it. And we are the ones who try to bridge the gap between policy and tech and technology, but this has been fantastically bipartisan. ACP is a bipartisan animal created in Congress that way, and of course, it is bipartisan among Americans in a world that is very divided on virtually everything. This is a place where people who think the country's going right love it, and people who think the country's going wrong love it. So that's a special thing right there. So we spend a lot of time focusing on this because we recognize that at the core of being an American, if everyone has this opportunity, it is a difference maker and could maybe be the thing that brings us all together.
Thank you so much. I just want to lift that up, what Kim noted, that this is a bipartisan issue. Recognizing that so many of the issues that we all fight for as advocates every day can be so partisan, need to remember as we're advocating for this program that this impacts every American. This isn't a red issue or a blue issue. This is an issue for everyone.
That's right.
So then moving ahead, before ACP became ACP, it was known as EBB, the Emergency Broadband Benefit Program that was started in the midst of the COVID crisis. I started with the leadership conference right around when EBB came to fruition, and so many organizations were coming together to build the plane as we were flying it, and it's such an important, crucial time in our society. So I want to turn to Josh and Jonathan next to talk a little bit about how did EBB come about, what was some of the work that your organizations put into the effort, and then how did it transition into ACP?
Yeah, I guess I can start. So I was actually at the FCC at the time when the the CARES Act was passed and kind of as this program was getting started, and just watching, the diligence and the effort of the FCC staff while all stuck in their homes to prop up and stand up this, massive investment and this, really novel program, and, keeping it as this light touch framework to really get the program going. And, as the program evolved, obviously there were challenges with getting constituents to both know about the program, but also to sign up and have, phone companies and telecom companies engage and participate in the program. But it was a task that was done in a matter of months, and I can't think of a time government has ever been that efficient with anything. So I guess hand it to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think, right, the pandemic really brought into sharp relief the issues that a lot of us have been talking about for years, when the internet became a literal lifeline for everyone to continue to connect, to go to work, stay in school, socially distance. So that really, the stories of the households that lacked this connectivity and couldn't afford it finally came to the forefront in various COVID relief legislation in 2020. It is a shame that it took a pandemic to get there, but Free Press and a lot of other organizations were happy to help get that program off the ground and get Congress to pass it. Although that said, it did take throughout the year. It wasn't a foregone conclusion it would happen. It came about in December of 2020 in that COVID relief bill. There was a lot of them. I know it's hard to keep track of them all, but it was a little bit of a surprise right before the holidays that both that bill passed and that EBB was included in it. So that kicked off a very quick process for the commission to perhaps unexpectedly do some 60-day proceedings on an emergency basis and get this program off the ground. The building the plane while you're flying it is a great analogy, and I don't think it gets addressed enough. Just how hard it was to get this new program off the ground and launch it in May of 2021, keeping in mind what was going on in those 6 months, right? I mean, between the pandemic, between a, let's say, rocky transition, a new, chairwoman. This was a hard time to be living and working in DC, let alone at an agency standing up a new program. But they did it. The $3 billion that was in EBB immediately got out to households that summer. And then in November of 2021, the bipartisan infrastructure law passed. And looking at this, the early and immediate successes of EBB, Congress decided to appropriate $14 billion more towards this program and rebrand it as the Affordable Connectivity Program, getting it out of the sort of emergency framing, which then kicked off another 60-day round at the commission that they did, again, very quickly to turn it into ACP a little over a year ago. So that's where we're at now, but it really has been impressive to see how quickly this program was stood up, transitioned, and got out to so many households.
Thank you. And we know that more than 18 million households are currently connected to the ACP program, and we want for them to stay connected. So next question, I'm going to turn to Kim and Catherine. Can you tell us a little bit about how ACP has been impactful? We heard from the digital navigation work from the first panel, some of the challenges and pitfalls into getting into the communities. But we also know there have been some really good success stories. So we'd love to hear about the impacts on the rural, suburban, urban areas, and in general. So Catherine, Kim? Kim, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, the thing about this program is it's successful. A lot of times there are a lot of programs and the government's going to do this or that, but this can demonstrably shown to be successful. And we have an interactive map on our Digital Progress Institute website. But let me just give you some of what it looks like. 29% of Kentuckians in the heart of Appalachia are enrolled, as are 25% of Louisianans in the rural parishes. And then congressional districts in urban areas like Los Angeles and in and around Jacksonville have similarly high rates of adoption. And this is really key. These are places where it was always really hard to get adoption. And if you do look at the Lewis-Latimer plan, if you get a chance, you'll see that it's not just about whether your community has broadband, it's does your community have it, and are people able to adopt it? And what's the number one way to get people to adopt it? They have to be able to afford it. And as they said on the earlier panel, you don't want them picking between groceries and broadband. You want them picking broadband because that's what they need to go forward. So now they can pick broadband because ACP makes that possible, and the work really then needs to be done in making sure that it's being utilized because it is the gateway to everything. I thought about Remember the old acronym, and this tells how old I am. It used to be health, education, and welfare. Well, guess what? If you've got broadband, you've got access to health care, you've got access to education, and you can have welfare because you can get a job. And most of the jobs of the future are going to have some broadband component. So this is why this has been such a great program. We continue to push the envelope. You know, it used to be when you talked about making sure that every American had broadband, it was like an abstract thing. Like it wasn't even like something that people thought of as something that had to be done. But thanks to COVID, see, COVID had something that we got good out of it. Thanks to COVID, everybody realized that, you know, if you couldn't get online to get health care or get your kids, and trust me, you needed your kids to be on broadband for sanity. So you know, not having these things is crucial. It wasn't, you know, people thought of it as, oh, if you've got money, you can have broadband, you know, like everybody here has 3 devices with them, I know. And you know, the real world wasn't really like that. But now, if we can get this whole set of people who were chronically left behind, we can connect everybody. And I think ACP is our really big shot at getting this one done.
Tough act to follow, Kim.
Sorry.
No, I'll take it.
You're good.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, like +1 to everything that Kim just said, but I think I want to pull on a few points that she just brought up. First, we do need to remember that price is the primary barrier to folks getting online. The cost of that subscription is the primary barrier. It's not availability, it's not skills, it's not devices, it's price. So once we take that barrier down, that opens up a wide world of connectivity and opportunity for households. The second thing, and again, everybody's kind of touched on this point so far, one of the important learnings from COVID was not just about, I think, reinforcing what many of us in this room have been advocating for and saying for many years, that broadband matters. Okay, we all got that. What I think we developed was a deeper understanding of this question of price and how it can be a barrier to households, specifically how price and the cost of a monthly broadband subscription can be a cost burden. So when we have families that are making decisions about trade-offs between, can I pay for new clothes for my kids? Can I think about other household essentials, or do I need to pay for my internet subscription? Research out of the University of Southern California in the fall of 2021 found that 25% of low-income households were making that trade-off each month. 25% of low-income households were deciding between, we could say, bread and broadband every month. So understanding that cost burden and what it means for households is really important, and COVID gave us deeper understanding of that. Third, before I actually answer your question, is that ACP doesn't necessarily mean free. So in some cases it does, but in many cases it just means that it's bringing that cost of the monthly subscription down. So for households where they really are kind of making those trade-off decisions each month, ACP is a really important way of just minimizing that cost burden on them. Okay, so we heard enrollment is high across urban, rural, suburban communities of all types. What we also see is that the highest level of enrollment is in majority rural states. Mississippi, Kentucky, North Carolina, Ohio. These are all states where you have, again, most of your population living in rural communities. So I think what we can also take away from this is that this is not, when we talk about the digital divide, it's really not an rural availability problem and an urban affordability problem. Like, let's just kick that to the curb, it's done. So now that we've also seen numbers of enrollment with ACP steadily increase since EBB started, as we transitioned into ACP, these numbers have just continued to go up each month. That tells us, importantly, that consumers, regardless of their income level, are finding value in these connections. They are looking at their monthly budgets, they are looking at ACP and the benefit that offers, and they are deciding that the cost of staying offline outweighs the monthly price of staying online.
So profound.
Awesome.
Thanks. When I was at a retreat in April in New Mexico, I came across some billboards
that were promoting ACP. And for me, that was a really meaningful moment, recognizing that the Leadership Conference has been fighting for this program for broadband for almost a decade, but then also recognizing how important connectivity and affordability are in a rural community. I live in Chicago, very urban community, and I know Chicago's doing some great work in this space, but I certainly know that all across the state we can do better. So I want to give Jonathan and Josh a moment if you have anything you want to share about why this program has been successful.
Yeah, I mean, I can start. So, I mean, just touching on what people were saying about the cost of broadband, I mean, one thing worth noting is that, you know, as broadband speeds have increased, broadband prices have gone down, even with inflation. So, you know, the trend is heading in the right direction, and having a market-driven program like ACP that continues that momentum, it doesn't force like rate control, it doesn't put any overbearing pressure on the carriers. It gives them the flexibility to choose and curate plans that are best suited to everyone, regardless of income level, and ACP meets people at that moment to give them the plans that they need. So for the $30 discount, if people need it, they can get a plan for $30 to get them connected at no cost. But maybe they need more speed, maybe they need more low latency in their connections. ACP can do that. ACP can give them a mobile device if that's more useful to them, if that's the type of technology that they need. And it's not just you know, fiber broadband. It can be fixed wireless. And you know, as the program evolves, maybe one day we could see satellite and other technologies incorporated as part of that program as well. You know, it really just goes beyond what a lot of the rigidity, you know, friction that we have with some of the older programs like Lifeline that really are limited in terms of what it offers, what services you can use it for, and what it does for the cost of broadband.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the most obvious success of the program is just the millions of households that are now connected and that, you know, are helping to get online and stay online. Even though this program was initially conceived of as an emergency program to help people get through the pandemic, it's obviously something that has lasting benefits. Now, you know, in addition to getting through the pandemic, it's helping households just deal with inflation and deal with the, you know, trade-offs that Catherine discussed in their household budgets, irrespective of the actual cost of this service. So that is by far the most important and key success of this program is the many, many households that are online and the many more that remain eligible that could sign up. But also, you know, from a policy standpoint, I think it's been very successful in pivoting the focus of this conversation on the digital divide to affordability. That really is the biggest barrier, but we, you know, that hasn't been the center of this conversation for a lot of years. It's great that there are billboards now, it's out there, but pre-COVID, there was really a lot of conversations around rural availability and many of the other big barriers, and oftentimes affordability got short shrift. I don't think that happens anymore. I think it's very clear whenever we talk about now the digital divide, everyone includes, if not starts with, this high cost of the service and what are we going to do to help households wherever they live and at whatever price point afford this service. And that alone is a pretty significant rhetorical shift. And, you know, as Catherine said, I think that old paradigm now we can throw out the window, and that has been a sort of DC focused success of this program.
Thank you, Josh. I just want to hit on what Josh said, that this program came about in the midst of a crisis, a global crisis, and it became an emergency program that is still not permanent. It is considered currently a temporary program. So now moving on to the next question, I want to draw out and talk a little bit more about the benefits of this program. Can one of you or all of you speak to what the economic benefits have been of the ACP?
Well, I mean, you know, you just save so much. I mean, you think about it, if my 83-year-old mother doesn't have to go in to the doctor and we're not sure what she has, not only do we help other people around who might not catch it if she has COVID or cause her to go out in a way that might make her less well than she already started out. Okay, so now we've got some health benefits, and they multiply every person all around the country all day long. And I actually think we're making it better for the doctors. I think they're more efficient. Those appointments, you know, they're 20 minutes or whatever they are. Every now and then there's some connectivity issues, but far and away, more people seen, more people helped. People in rural areas who might not have access to certain types of doctors have that opportunity. This is all a savings to us as communities. Education, same thing. Can't reach the kids, can't get into school, live too far, maybe they have asthma. All these things, they can now sit at their computer in the comfort of their home and learn and be educated, take classes. I've seen, I used to do a tour. I was at MMTC, Multicultural Media, Telecom, and Internet Council. I know, too long. Anyway, too long of a name. Anyway, so we went on a tour, and I met people who were using the McDonald's Wi-Fi to get their degrees. And we're not talking about they were in high school. We're talking about people getting master's degrees, people getting college degrees. I mean, a huge opportunity for us as a society to have people get to technology that they just couldn't afford to get to at home. And then the third thing, starting businesses that they never, I met somebody at the at this expo. She had a button for everything. Like, she sold Mary Kay. She sold Herbalife. She had like 5 buttons. I was like, how do you even do all that, right? She was hustling hard. So, I mean, this is the future for some people. You know, maybe you don't fit into the rubric of working for even, say, Uber, but boy, you can do all those businesses from home and make a living. I mean, I think that is a huge, huge thing, and I think people hadn't seen it all the way on that whole continuum far enough, and the ability now for people to be able to drill down and say, I can get this opportunity that nobody in my family would have ever had, jobs that no one in my family ever even thought of. I mean, that is so powerful and is such an opportunity for us to harness that economic benefit, and this program more than pays for itself if you think about it that way.
So if I can, if I can add to that, I mean, it does, as you said, it creates a market because there's a lot of economic impact from people who are able to connect online. I mean, there's huge markets of areas of people who have been on the wrong side of digital divide. You bring that connection to them, not only do they then build and generate revenue for their communities, but they also develop new markets for additional broadband deployment. So we're always talking about adoption and access. It's an access driver as well. It creates a market base, it pulls users, and they're going to get the latest and greatest because there's a huge customer base now that's looking for that kind of market. So it does both. It connects people at the local level, but it also builds up communities, it builds up broadband, it does everything you want and more. Like, who knows, maybe we won't need some of the other programs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could have, an entire morning event on the benefits, obviously, of broadband access, but I mean, you touched on, two of the ones that I always come back to, healthcare and education. So telehealth does save patients money, and it saves the healthcare system money. So it's been a huge driver of that, and that's been great. And a disproportionate number of people signing up on ACP are over the age of 60. So particularly for aging Americans, that access to telehealth services is saving both sides of the equation a lot of money and a lot of time. And on the education side, we saw in 2020 surging dropout rates in community colleges because as they shifted to online learning, as every other school did, they found that actually a lot of people were enrolling in-person community college rather than a distance learning option precisely because they didn't have a home broadband connection. So getting those people online, particularly through programs like Pell Grant eligibility, has been really instrumental in getting a key population staying enrolled in community colleges, which oftentimes are working parents. They're not high school students. They're not, traditional college students necessarily. So they need that assistance to stay in these kinds of programs. And that has huge benefits, obviously, for the students, for the schools, but also for workforce development and the economy.
The last thing that I'd add, again, just echoing what everyone else said, but research that came out of Purdue a few years ago found that for every dollar the state of Indiana invested not only in broadband availability, but in broadband adoption, the state could expect a $3 to $4 return on that $1 investment. So think about that, and we're talking about technology as a tool for democratizing opportunity across communities, but let's really think about what that affordable access can mean for the revenue base for our towns, for our states, for our country nationwide. So I think the more that we can really look at the short, medium, and long-term economic impacts of equal access, the better off we will be able to be in really targeting these programs and ensuring that they are achieving the maximum benefit for our economy and overall welfare of our communities.
Certainly. I would say that recognizing all of these benefits that have been noted makes it important for us to remember why we are advocating to save this program. As we think about our daily lives and how we're very much in that hybrid moment, we want to be able to make sure that everybody has an equal footing in being able to live their best lives. And side note to New America, we need some save ACP buttons. So now moving a little bit deeper into the work. This question is for Josh, but anyone can jump in. Can you share a little bit about the program eligibility, right, for the ACP program? How has this been impactful, and how has this particularly impacted enrollment?
Sure. So the previous panel, I think, touched on some of these issues and the importance of how people become eligible for the program. When EBB was created, importantly, it expanded on some of the traditional eligibility categories in programs like Lifeline. There were some really targeted efforts towards students. So if you're in the National School Lunch Program or receiving a Pell Grant, you are now eligible for this program, and that was a new thing. So this is important, first and foremost, because it just expands the pool of people, but it really has been key in just helping to streamline access. There's a lot more that needs to be done here, but the more programs that already enroll you in the into ACP, the better. People need as many avenues as possible because there's already too much burdens on enrolling in these kinds of programs. I think, people have referred to it as the time tax, especially on particularly low-income households, that enrolling in these kinds of programs and the other burdens that these households face is already a huge, huge problem in so many programs, from SNAP to Medicaid. So one of the best ways that we can help alleviate this time tax is to get people enrolled through other programs that already exist, that they might already be signed up for. So the more eligibility categories there are, the easier it is for people to maybe be signing up for something else and hear from a social worker or a digital navigator, right, that like, hey, have you heard about ACP? We can sign you up quickly here. The other big benefit is that it allows the system to link up to other systems. So we have the National Verifier through the Lifeline program that can now link up to SNAP databases, Medicaid databases, veterans databases, the Pell database. The more that we do that, the quicker and the easier it is to get to that hopeful dream of where someone actually can just very easily go on a portal, click, am I eligible? Yes, no, done. We're very far from that, but increasing eligibility gets us a lot closer.
I think just increasing eligibility, but also thinking about just the challenge of enrollment. And folks, thankfully, talked quite a bit about this on the last panel. Thank you for doing that and doing the walkthrough of what it really takes to get someone to sign up, and the time tax, of course. I apologize if I'm repeating what someone said, but it's like a 47% failure rate for those applications. Education Superhighway has that number somewhere. So think about that. Almost half of the people who apply fail, not because they're ineligible, but because it's tough. So I think that there's as we think about the success of the program, it's not just, and as we think about the evolution of the program, it's not just the number of people that we're getting enrolled, but that we are really assessing the program administration to make it even easier for those folks who qualify to get online.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in?
No, they said it quite well.
Okay, so this next question is geared towards Catherine, but anyone can jump in. ACP is necessary and interfaces deeply with BEAD and CPF implementation. Can you first explain what these acronyms stand for, what the implementation is, and how there's this interfacing?
Sure. We need like a sign with all the acronyms up. So CPF first, that's the Capital Projects Fund. It's a program that's administered by the U.S. Department of Treasury. It's an American Rescue Plan Act program. CPF is a program that is primarily focused on broadband, although states can use it for other purposes. But it is a $10 billion fund for states to address a broad range of connectivity needs. Okay, that's one. The other is BEAD, the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. Did I get that right? Thank you. Appreciate this on the side. Y'all, it's a mouthful. So BEAD is a program that's funded by the infrastructure bill. It's administered by NTIA. So the relationship to these deployment programs and ACP, the affordable subsidy. CPF requires that any ISP receiving a grant through the CPF program, that they have to participate in ACP. BEAD all but requires it. They don't explicitly name ACP like CPF does. Sorry, I'm throwing a lot of acronyms at all of you now, and I'm confusing myself. But again, BEAD all but requires it through the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, that outlines all the program rules. So why does this matter? This is the first time that we're seeing these deployment grants make a specific requirement for recipients to actually include and participate in an affordability program. What we're seeing right now is really sort of the breaking down of the barrier, the traditional silos in this field. You had your deployment people on one side, you had your fluffy equity people on another side. No more. Because what we have seen, everybody's touched on this in various ways throughout this panel, we need to correct both the supply side and the demand side when it comes to the digital divide. And that's really what these grants are doing. They're trying to stabilize revenue for internet service providers who are connecting areas that may not offer a high return on investment. They're increasing that customer base for those providers as well. And they're decreasing churn. So the rate at which customers sign up and then drop off of their subscription because they can't afford those monthly costs. So by tying these affordability requirements to deployment requirements, we are really addressing and trying to address, not completely, but trying to right size some of the financial risk that comes along with deploying to these high cost communities.
And if I can just touch on that, I think that kind of illustrates another strength of ACP, because ACP doesn't have a lot of the red tape that a lot of these other programs have. I mean, there's a lot of concern with the BEAD program, both from the NOFO that NTIA put out, but additionally with the mapping and just whether or not when that money is going to go to the states, when they're going to start putting shovels in the ground and laying fiber or other technologies to actually start deploying these networks. I mean, it could be 10 years minimum before we see any fruit of the labor of the BEAD program. But ACP, that money's already there. It's already going to work. It's already getting people connected. And the same goes with, the GAO report said there's 120 different broadband programs out there, many of which are duplicative. We've got one program here that really shines above all these other programs as one that's getting people connected, getting people access, driving markets, driving deployment, and this is why it's a program we really should be focusing our attention on.
Well, and I think this is why we, had Administrator Davidson speaking earlier and why he's so focused on this program. If it is allowed to expire, what do we do about that low cost requirement, right? It's, this wasn't just, part of the laundry list of requirements in these various infrastructure programs. It was a core requirement, because as much as BEAD and CPF are focused on access and building out networks to unserved areas, those networks that they build, if they are unaffordable, they're not really going to work. Those programs are not going to be successful. So the Affordable Connectivity Program is a really key element of making those infrastructure programs successful. And without it, it's going to be a lot more complicated, I think, to enforce that low-cost requirement.
And I think what I would also add is that we're talking about 100% coverage. Alan said this earlier today. We've heard this repeated by everybody at NTIA, Treasury, but that is NTIA's mandate, 100% coverage of not only availability, but affordable connections as well. So this isn't the affordable connections and thinking about those lower income households that's not just a tack on anymore. Our states are required to account for all of those households and how all of those households will be served. They're required to account for that before money even goes to them. So that means also that ISP partners who will be receiving these deployment grants, they also need to account for these households as well. So we are really forcing these grants are forcing a very different way of looking at affordability and affordable deployment in the long run. And we're doing it at the beginning rather than at the end.
And I will also note that the FCC outreach grants go live this month. Their grant programs last 2 years, which means June 2025. But we are hearing that the dollars for the ACP program will complete, if it's not refunded, earliest of spring next year, or it could be summer of next year. How are these outreach grantees supposed to do their work if they don't know how long an ACP program is going to last? So my final question, before we turn to questions from the audience, for all the panelists, why should Congress continue to fund the ACP?
It's a hugely popular program. It is the only program that we could probably say that about right here sitting today. I think if you look at some of the polls, you'll see 64% of Republicans support it, 70% of independents support it, and I think it's like 95% of Democrats support it. I mean, that's as big a consensus as we probably ever see for anything ever. And what's really great about that is it really represents what the American public is saying, that this is something we need, and whether you like where it's going or you don't like where we're going, you're still in favor of this. So I think that the push should be on the win-win, and I love that we brought this up today, this whole notion of, you know, selling people on the economics of it. You know, people think that when you spend money on a program, it means we spent money, we gave money to people, we somehow did good. But what they really don't measure is what was the cost to society of this money spent. And I really believe that every dollar spent on this program is such a big investment in who we are. It is like building a road. And so rather than thinking of it as, you know, this is money that went out, this is money that's actually going to come back in a way that will resound for generations. And so I think that when we have to think about talking about why this and not something else, this works. This is beloved. This works whether you're in rural Appalachia or whether you're in urban Los Angeles. And I think that's the key. Very few programs can really have that kind of reputation. And again, in a world that's so divided over so many things, how great is it to be able to work every day to make something happen that you know will make a difference for Americans, whether they live on a reservation where the topography is, you know, impossible, or whether they live in mountains, or they're in like a place that's very hard to get to, or whether they live right in the middle of the biggest city, and it's going to make a huge change in the projection of their life. I think that's magic.
And I mean, I think Kim, you know, hit the nail on the head. Like, this is a bipartisan effort. I mean, there's a number of Republicans and Democrats alike who both supported the program, and this needs to be an effort from both sides. Like, we have a divided Congress. We know the political realities of getting anything through. The House Republicans working under cut go right now. They're looking to cut spending left and right, and we're here asking for anywhere between 8 to 14 billion to continue this program. But that doesn't mean it's an insurmountable task. I mean, there's a number of vehicles that Congress can look to finding that funding. But, you know, the work needs to be done in a way that engages with both sides. Like, this can't be an endeavor where we're just looking to one side, say, hey, let's keep this going, especially when there's a groundswell. And that's why a conversation like this, where you've got people, you know, across the political spectrum engaging on such an important issue, and, you know, that engagement really needs to continue as we kind of look forward to preserve this program.
And as Anita said, you know, we're looking at potentially running out of funding early next year. So we also need to think critically and carefully about what it would look like if we go over that cliff, and what it means for the millions of households that are currently benefiting from the program. Obviously, losing this assistance would be, you know, hugely problematic for these households, either forcing them to make trade-offs in their household budget or lose connectivity. But as the prior panel touched on, you know, there's just this issue of what happens when they have to de-enroll from this program. If that happens because the program runs out of money, and we don't know exactly when that date will be, the FCC is supposed to send out a 90-day notice of when the program will run out of money. But how that notice reaches the recipients is very unclear, but it is likely to make the enrollment problems that we saw, you know, look like a cakewalk. People are not going to know exactly what it's going to mean for them. It's highly unlikely that this would be a very, you know, clean wind down of the program. There's a very real risk that some households might inadvertently get signed up for legacy plans they can't afford, things that they, you know, really didn't want, right? A lot of people are in ACP because it is an all-in program that covers all of their costs because that is all they can afford in these very low-income households. If they suddenly and accidentally get upsold on something different when the program runs out of money, that is something that could very quickly and very immediately devastate these household budgets, send them into arrears, ruin their credit scores, and that now is a leading cause of homelessness. We don't want to hit this nightmare scenario, right? But it's easy to see how we could get there given how complicated it was for these households to sign up and how complicated it might be for them to get off the program. But let's not find out what that's like. This is why Congress really needs to refund this program so that these households stay on this and we don't go over that cliff.
I'm going to pivot to the fiscal responsibility line. $10 billion for the Capital Projects Fund for broadband, $42.5 billion, these are all with Bs, mind you, for the BEAD program. That is about $55 billion, not really, more or less, we can quibble over the numbers later, on deployment that is tied to ACP. That money is already going out the door. More than half of states have their CPF funds. They are actively implementing those grants now. States all across the country are implementing their planning funds from BEAD. So as we think about this massive task that is in front of us, which is 100% coverage of affordable high-speed internet across the country, this is a huge undertaking. I cannot emphasize that enough. Why would we introduce additional risk, additional challenges into an already complex process by threatening the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is essential to the affordability of these deployment initiatives in the long run, short-term and long run? Why would we threaten that and threaten the investments that Congress has already made? So let's minimize that risk. Let's keep ACP funded, and let's all get to work because we need everybody in this room and elsewhere to help us actually reach that goal.
Well said. I'll just note that at the Leadership Conference, we say that having access to affordable and accessible broadband is a civil right. It's a human right, and it's one that we need to continue to fund and to save. So with that said, do we have questions from the audience? Yes. Right here. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Great question, great conversations, and I want to tie into something that you said, Joshua, and also Catherine. Hi, Catherine. But we keep talking about the word affordable, and who defines affordability? So when we talk about let's not go over that cliff and we're planning for worse, let's plan for what happens if it does get refunded. So then what does $30 look like in 2025? And there is no stipulation that, I found it quite interesting that when ACP came out with $30, magically you had $30 plans popping up with every ISP. So that's an artificially defined terminology of affordability, $30. It's not defined by the FCC, it's not regulated or whatever. So at what point in time, if we're planning for success, and let's look at 2025, what does affordability look like when we're blowing out, to your point, $42.5 billion plus another $52 billion for affordability, but we're not capping what or defining what or regulating what does affordability look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, when it started out as EBB, it was a $50 subsidy. So it went down to $30, but these plans all managed to meet those thresholds, right? And of course, the Lifeline program's at $10. I think, that it gets to the core of a really key question that, not just 2025, but even, 5-10 years ago, we needed to be addressing, which is really what is that true cost of broadband and what does affordable broadband look like? It's very hard to answer that question because we don't have good pricing data. The government doesn't collect that data. We've been trying to do this for years, but it hasn't happened. There is a requirement as part of ACP that the FCC begins collecting some of this pricing data for the very first time, and also implementing the broadband nutrition label so we get more data there. But that's brand new information. So that's really going to be key, I think, to figuring out what affordability looks like for the future of the program. But it really remains to be seen how those provisions get implemented and what kind of data we get, how accessible it is to researchers, third parties. But that is definitely a key question because, right, the $30 amount was created, but not necessarily tied to the kind of robust data that we would have wanted. But, you know, it's because we just simply don't have it. And we really do need a lot more of that data, both on the pricing, but also on just what households are enrolling so we can better target our efforts here. That data is really important to all of this.
And I think, in a way, you kind of answered your own question. I mean, as you said, you know, the carriers weren't forced or coerced to lower their plans. They did that because they knew there was a market for it. Market drove the price down. Market is continuously driving the price of broadband. There's more competition in broadband than there ever has been before. Like, yes, there's last miles in areas that are still, you know, deprived of coverage, but we're getting there. And that's what these massive investments in BEAD and other programs, well, you know, are designed to do. So as competition grows, as more opportunity grows, price is going to fall with it. It's already on that trend right now. I don't see why that would suddenly change.
I think the other point that we're not addressing here is that we have a lot of work to do when it comes to thinking about what is the long-term answer for affordable connections in this country. ACP is not perfect, and there are, I think, many ways that we could improve the program. But I think for some folks who are looking at things like universal service reform, a temporary refunding of ACP, even looking at, for example, unspent COVID relief funds, could that provide us enough of a bridge in order for us to have more robust discussions and come up with more robust solutions to get at that exact challenge that you just outlined, Leon, about having policies that are more responsive and more responsive to the marketplace and more accurately reflective of the marketplace. So I think that there's a lot of, we have, for all of the progress that has been made, which is an enormous amount of progress, in case y'all haven't gotten that, there's still work to be done and options to discuss with Congress on that too.
Yes.
Oh, shoot, sorry.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me? Okay. Thanks for a lot of great information, both panels. I sort of feel like we're preaching to the choir here, and, you know, we all know how slow Congress moves. We all know what it took to get the debt limit increased. We're talking about 6 months from now. We can't afford to be talking about anything else except the tactics and strategy of how we get this passed. So my question is, you know, I see two parts of this. One, how high of a priority is it among Democrats? But that's secondary to how many Republicans, can we get it off the list of things that Republicans are going to, you know, die for to avoid refunding? And so my question for Jonathan is, you had some really interesting sort of, you know, free market analysis. What, if any, arguments are moving Republicans?
I mean, I've had a number of conversations with, you know, both Republican and Democrat officers. I mean, they all recognize the importance of the program. They recognize the importance of their constituents enrolling in the program. They recognize the need for a free market-driven type program that has a tech neutrality, that is working to connect real Americans. They see that. And the question for Republican officers isn't, should we keep this program going? It's, what should the future of this program look like, and how do we fund it? And, you know, that question is getting answered. We're getting closer to finding solutions to that as they're, you know, discussing budgets, as they're looking at different appropriations packages. And that's really the question. It's not, we are Republicans interested in keeping this program alive. It's, how do we keep this program alive? How do we make it more efficient? How do we ensure that we're, you know, stepping down on waste, fraud, and abuse to ensure the longevity of this program?
I'd also add, too, that, you know, we need to do a better job in D.C. of bringing the perspective of elected leaders from states in here, particularly when it comes to Republicans. You've got Republican governors and legislatures across the country that are very much so encouraging enrollment in ACP. Governor Lee, Governor Ivey, Governor DeWine, those are the voices that we should be turning to help us work with their colleagues and partners in Congress to figure out, like, what do we do to either pay for this and to just make it last longer.
Yeah, and we can't forget, I mean, Republicans voted twice for funding for this program. It was passed on a bipartisan basis, so that can happen again. But, you know, it's important that we also continue to look at the enrollment data and see this is not a program that's just happening in Democratic districts. There's huge enrollment in Republican districts, so we have to keep pushing that forward. I think, to your point, though, there's incredible urgency in the timeline here. next spring is going to come real fast, and on Congress's timeline, that's right around the corner. I do think that the debt ceiling fight did, suck some of the oxygen out of the room for quite some time on all issues, way beyond ACP. But now that we're past that, I do think that there is a lot more room for these kinds of conversations with Republican offices.
Can I push back really quick on one piece? Some Republicans voted for it, sure, but that was in an era, unless I'm totally mistaken, where the Republicans were not controlling the House. And this is something that has to get probably 50% or more of Republican support in the House. A handful of Republicans voting for the Infrastructure Act is not indicative of what we face now.
I think we need to increase the temperature. I think that we need a field campaign. We need to be out in the field. We need to be talking to members and bringing the perspective of their constituents, their state broadband officers to them. And we need to be increasing, we got to make it uncomfortable. And we also need to explain what the trade-off is if it does go away. But I mean, I think a field campaign and just bringing those local voices into the in front of them is hopefully will help.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I mean, let's just look at over these past several years, how many times we have gotten over the hurdle of passing some big legislative packages that seemed impossible. So, I mean, this program was created in a COVID relief bill that was very, very bipartisan. Hopefully we are not in that kind of crisis scenario again next year to create those situations, but time and again we have heard, this kind of very, understandable grounded pessimism around a lot of big legislative packages, and then out of nowhere it happens. So, you don't get what you don't fight for, so that's what we've got to do for the next 6 to 9 months.
I just want to jump in and agree, because I think that a lot of times when we just do sort of one thing and not bring this whole panoply of all these, bringing the constituents, and I also think raising the economic issue, that this is something that brings value to communities that would not have gotten it, and places that people don't really, everywhere in DC think about all the time. And when you see the results of this program in a place like Louisiana or Kentucky, I mean, that's clearly a place that you don't want to be looking at those people and saying, we took it away because we don't want to vote for anything. I think that's going to be the pressure that makes the difference.
And just to add, and I kind of, mentioned this point earlier, is this program cannot happen alone just with one party. I mean, Republicans are, by and large, supporters for this program.
Yes.
This is a type of program that Republicans have been clamoring for a long time. Like, this isn't like an entitlement program. It's not something that, they're shaking in their seat for. It's a voucherized system, it's market neutral, and it's driving the economy. This is everything that they're hoping for in a program. And we're having that conversation, and it's being recognized, and they hear it. But there needs to be Republican engagement. There needs to be Republicans as seats at the table to get them to be like, no, we are champions of this issue. We're not players in the game. They have as much of a seat, as much of a role. Like, there's an event at the White House. Is there Republican involvement? Is there Republican participation? Because there needs to be every step of the way if we want to see this program survive.
More questions in the back.
Yes, my name is Roger Cochetti. I'm an editorial contributor on technology policy for the Hill newspaper, and my background is in the satellite industry. And my question is really a little bit of the opposite of what was just asked, not the very short term. I think the program is extremely important, and I'm a strong supporter of it, and you have an emergency right now. My question really has to do with the medium to long term. And in the satellite industry, there are dramatic changes that are taking place in the technology and the cost structure. To oversimplify, up until about 10 years ago, you put a space segment up, $1 billion. Last 10 years, you got to amortize it over 100,000 users, $50 a month minimum to cover your costs. Today, $200 million gives you a low Earth orbiting system, lasts 2 years, and you can amortize it over 300 million users, 50 million in North America, 50 million in Africa, 50 million in South Asia, 50 million in East Asia, blah, blah, blah. So the cost structure for satellite delivered broadband is coming down from minimum $50 a month down to about $1 a month to cover your costs. Not prices. Prices are what the market will bear or what you can get the government to pay. Costs. The ground segment, again, up until about 10 years ago, you're looking at $100 for a satellite dish, $50 or maybe $500 for a satellite dish, $100 for a flat antenna. Today, this year, several cell phone users are introducing satellite cell phone service. So you're going to use your iPhone to connect to the satellite. Your ground segment will be zero cost if you have an iPhone. So that's not today. That's not next year. I'm talking about over the next 10 years. There's a dramatic shift taking place in the cost structure of satellite delivered broadband. And it raises questions about the entire program, which is perfectly justified if you look backwards to the 1950s when you have to run wires over mountains and run wires through, low income areas and cover all these huge costs. But looking forward with global low Earth orbiting satellite systems that connect to cell phones, we're looking at a different economic situation. My question then is anybody looking at that long-term aspect of the future? And again, I'm talking about costs, not prices. Prices are what you can get the government to pay or what the market will bear. So just a question about the opposite, not the short term of saving the program, but the long term, where are things going? Thank you.
Yeah, if I can quickly touch on that. I'm really glad you raised the satellite issue because I think what the LEO technology is going to do is going to completely transform our fundamental understanding of how we get connected. There are areas, unfortunately, that will just unlikely never be connected by fiber. I love to use Alaska as an example. You can't really easily lay fiber through permafrost. So there are these remote regions that if we really want to connect the last mile, we're going to have to rely on technology like LEO, like GEO satellites. And as the technology improves, as the speed improves, as the latency improves, as competition in that space improves, I mean, you've got SpaceX with a readily deployed constellation. You've got Amazon ready to launch their constellation. You've got 2 or 3 other competitors trying to get their satellites in space as well. There's going to be a space race to get people connected, and that's going to have a transformative impact. And again, the beauty of a program like ACP is the ACP paradigm fits that. It can meet that moment when we're at that moment so that people that are using satellite broadband can benefit from that. It includes a device stipend, which didn't really come up much in this conversation today as part of ACP. There's no reason to suggest that maybe that could help subsidize the cost of terminals to get these houses and other communities connected.
So, in terms of the long-term future of this market, obviously we need more competition. And, the promise of satellite internet is there. I hope it does bring some competitive pressure long term. But the reality is today that most households have at most 1 or 2 ISPs that serve them. That's a monopoly or a duopoly. And that is driving a large part of the high cost of internet service. And that's been true for many, many years. So look, I hope that there's some promise there. I think there are some concerns, right, about the capacity of satellite internet and just how many people it really can serve. But the other sort of long-term question when we're talking about ACP and the population that we're serving here is the long-term future of poverty. There is just, these are very low-income households, and, I don't think we're looking anywhere near in the long-term future of a point at which the prices are driving down so low that these very low-income households can simply afford it without some kind of subsidy. Poverty is an endemic problem in this country. We need to be combating it on multiple levels, but until that goes away, we still need to be talking about programs like this as well. It's not just about the price in the market. It's about this particular segment of people and what they need and where they're going.
So I know we're close to time, so I want to give the panelists just 30 seconds to share parting words, share something you may not have shared already that you want for the audience to know.
I'll just say, in all the big movies, all the Star movies, Star Wars, Star Trek, when you want to get rid of people, you send them to the planet with no technology. You send them, right? Aren't they? Don't they? It's always like, darkness, and they get there. And I mean, that analogy really applies here. We can't go back to that. We can't doom people to being somewhere where they can never get off the planet and join us on our planet. So that's what remember that when people are saying, oh, I don't know if we can do that. Nobody should have to go to the planet with no technology. So.
I don't know how I'm going to follow that. But no, I mean, I think, everything that the panel said is so important. I mean, you can build bridges somewhere, but you need to have someone on the other side to, there has to be a reason to get across the bridge. And that's what ACP does. It creates a market. It brings people to the internet, helps them connect, helps them stay connected. And it's really a tremendous program. And it really does need a huge push and a huge support from a lot of different organizations, different stakeholders, different opinions. And this panel is the perfect embodiment of different interests, different organizations with different missions, supporting this one program that really can bridge the adoption side of the digital divide.
Yeah, and I would just say again, you don't get what you don't fight for. So it's really, really important that everybody contacts the members of Congress, contacts the influencers around them, work whatever angles you have, because they do need to hear about this. It does need to be a big push, but it's really not an insurmountable one. We actually have done this before. So it's really, really imperative over the next 6 months that we really do have this push on the Hill, that we really lift up the successes of this program. The other thing I would just say is, to all the folks in the prior panel and anyone else in the room who's been doing the on-the-ground work of just signing these people up and navigating them through this Byzantine, process of getting an internet service provider that I think annoys just about everybody. Thank you. It's really, really important work, and absolutely nothing in this program would have been successful without that. It's just really, really important. So thanks.
Amen. Yeah. I will just wrap up by saying first, thank you to New America and their partners at Network On for providing us the opportunity to talk about all of this today. I mean, taking a couple hours out of anyone's day is not easy, but thank you for all of you for listening and for your thoughtful questions. Like I said earlier, we need everybody's support in getting this done. And to those of you who may work within states, please work with your state broadband offices. They are already committing a lot of resources and time and people to getting this work done and out in the field and building that momentum. So if you do work in the states, please raise your hand and help them out. But for those of us who are based in DC, let's go to Congress and get this refunded.
Well, thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for our conversation around the importance of ACP. Really quick note to everyone, this is the week of action for ACP, as Secretary Davidson noted. It kicks off today at 4 o'clock. There will be a webinar with the Department of Education. And then on Tuesday, June the 20th, the Leadership Conference will be hosting a social media day of action. We will be using the hashtag #OnlineForAll, very much like the White House is, along with all other partnering organizations. We encourage you to participate. We want to use this social media day of action to reach out to legislators in the social media space and remind them why this program is so important and that we need to save it. So please join me in a round of applause for our panelists. Please stick around. We've got a video from the White House, and then we've got closing remarks from the President and CEO of Public Knowledge, Chris Lewis.
Greetings, everyone. In the 21st century, high-speed internet is not a luxury. It is a necessity, which is why President Biden and I are in the process of making high-speed internet affordable for everyone. Already, we have given more than 18 million Americans a $30 discount on their monthly internet bill, $30 off every single month. And because many of these folks have plans that cost $30 or less every month, today millions of Americans get their high-speed internet absolutely free. So to see if you are eligible, go to getinternet.gov, getinternet.gov. Take care.
Let's hear it for the Vice President, absolutely. Thank you all for coming. My name is Chris Lewis. I'm the President and CEO of Public Knowledge. Really, really proud to be co-sponsoring this with our friends here at New America and the Network On folks. Congratulations to Lillian, Emery. Thank you for hosting all of us here. Fantastic conversations today, and a lot of what I would want to say if I was trying to tell people why ACP is important has been said. So what is left to say? I really want us to just take a step back as a group here in the room, folks who are watching this on video, online, or recorded, and remember that while this is the end of this program today, this is the beginning of really important work. public knowledge, 22 years in the digital rights field, of which the digital equity movement that all of you are a part of is a foundational part of our work and of digital rights work. And this day, today, the start of the week of action that the White House is leading and that others are leading is critically important for us to make ACP sustainable and funded so that we can continue to keep folks connected. I'm so proud to be a part of this digital equity movement that all of you are a part of. The folks in this room, the folks who've been up here on the stage today, really exemplify the broad base of support for connecting everyone. This program was called, Affordable Connectivity Program on the ground and in DC, and we've seen that here today. 220 groups, along with public knowledge, have signed on to support the ACP program and to get it refunded. We have industry partners here working hand in glove with us. We need you guys. Thank you for being here. We have folks on the ground. I'm so amazed at the work of our digital navigators and that part of the field that's growing and is leading the way and building trust for folks to realize that this program can support them, it can be relevant to their lives, and that it's not insurmountable. Thank you for your work. And the fact that this is left-right, that we have folks up here from all ideologies for a bipartisan bill, and it'll take a bipartisan effort to refund it. So, we saw, we had a governor here from North Carolina, a Democrat, but governors across the country are supporting re-upping this program because they need it, because their communities need it. So whether you're in Texas and your governor supports it, whether you're in Ohio and oh my gosh, your governor supports it. The numbers in Ohio that were said earlier, like 46% eligible. Come on, Ohio. Lead the way. Help us get this passed here. We've got a tremendous opportunity. Alan Davidson was here and he called it our big infrastructure opportunity. But this window right now, June to September, is critical for us to make this happen, to get the ACP refunded. And why? Because those of us who are here and work in Washington, who aren't on the ground, but have to navigate the craziness of getting legislation passed, will tell you that this is our window to get it passed. That coming off of the debt ceiling debate that everyone saw in the news, and leading into the conversation about how the government is funded this fall, that we have an opportunity to make it very clear that the ACP program is a must-have, that is not a nice-to-have. If you're talking, and I hope you're talking, to your congressional leaders, that should be your message, that we must have this program refunded. If you're on the ground, you're a digital navigator, go to onlineforall.org, this new website that was launched today to support this effort. Point the folks that you're working with on the ground to have their voices heard through it so they can follow how they can get engaged to make sure the ACP is funded again. And, it's an exciting time. Let's pull out all the stops here, guys. This is a powerful movement. This group here, I've worked with many of you for years. I know what you're capable of, but I also know who you represent across the country. And we need to make sure that all of the Americans who benefit from this, and it's left, right, and center, that's why it's so popular, that those voices are heard. So we have to make that happen. Whether it's Anita, where's Anita? Save ACP buttons? Okay, if it's gonna take a button, then make a button. If you need me to make buttons, I'll make buttons. But every one of you have to find a way to do your part. Our friends in industry who are here, we need you to step up and speak to the importance of how this is not a giveaway to industry. This is an investment, as Kim was saying. This is an investment in people. This is an investment in people that pays off in their education, in their healthcare, in their entrepreneurship, in their economic value. It pays off threefold, fourfold. We have to deliver that message. So this is the beginning. This is not the end. It's the end of this program. And I want to thank you all for being here today. I want to thank you all for watching. But if you're watching or if you're in this room, figure out how you're going to contribute over the next 3, 4, 5 months to make this program get refunded, so that we can work on the long-term solutions. And I'm glad those questions were asked about long-term solutions. We're going to get there, but we only get there if we make sure that the folks that are connected right now to this program that has been successful for this short period of time can stay connected, and then we can work on the long-term future. So thank you for all of you being here today. Thank you to our partners at Network On and New America. When you have the buttons, I'll be the first one to buy one. And let's get out there and get the work done. It's a great time right now for us to advocate for people and to work on the public interest to make sure everyone is connected. And so every day, remember that. Remember how powerful all of you are, and let's work together to get this done, okay? Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.